At Lincoln High School, the morning sun filtered through the tall windows of room 207, casting long shadows across the desks. The room was filled with the usual sounds of teenage chatter, students whispering to each other, giggling or complaining about homework they hadn't done. Mrs. Harper stood at the front of the classroom, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as she stared at the chalkboard. Her face was a mix of frustration and exhaustion. She had spent nearly an hour trying to explain a complex math problem to her class, but most of them weren't paying attention. Some were doodling in their notebooks, others were scrolling on their phones under their desks, and a few were simply staring blankly into space. "Does anyone even care?" Mrs. Harper finally snapped, breaking the silence. Her voice echoed slightly in the half-empty room. A few students glanced up briefly before returning to whatever they had been doing. One boy in the back row yawned loudly without bothering to cover his mouth. Mrs. Harper sighed deeply, rubbing her temples with her fingers. She loved teaching, but days like this made her wonder if she was wasting her time. As the lunch bell rang, signaling the end of the period, the students scrambled out of their seats, eager to escape. Backpacks swung over shoulders, chairs scraped against the floor, and within seconds the room was almost empty. Only Mrs. Harper remained standing by the chalkboard with a defeated expression. On the board was a complicated calculus equation, one that involved multiple variables and layers of logic. It was the kind of problem that would stump even college students, yet here it was, scribbled messily in white chalk on a high school blackboard. Mrs. Harper picked up an eraser and began wiping away the equation. As she worked, she muttered under her breath, "Why do I even bother? No one listens. No one cares." Her tone was bitter, tinged with disappointment. Just as she finished erasing the last line of the problem, the door creaked open. Marcus Johnson stepped inside, pushing a cleaning cart stacked with mops, buckets, and spray bottles. He was wearing his standard uniform, a navy blue jumpsuit with the school logo stitched onto the pocket, and carried himself with a quiet confidence that seemed out of place in the chaotic world of high school. Marcus was in his mid-30s, with dark skin and short-cropped hair peppered with gray. His eyes were sharp and observant, though he rarely said much. Most people didn't notice him when he walked down the halls. He blended into the background, just another part of the school's daily routine. But today something caught his attention, the faint remnants of the erased equation still visible on the chalkboard. Even though the writing was smudged, Marcus could see enough of it to understand what it was. It wasn't every day you came across such a challenging problem outside of advanced academic circles. "Hey, Marcus," Mrs. Harper said, forcing a smile as she turned to face him. Her voice softened, though there was still a hint of irritation lingering beneath the surface. "How's it going?" "Not bad, not bad," Marcus replied smoothly, nodding politely. His voice was deep and calm, with a warmth that put people at ease. "You look like you've had a rough morning," Mrs. Harper chuckled dryly, shaking her head. "Rough doesn't even begin to cover it. These kids..." She gestured vaguely toward the empty seats. "They don't get it. They don't want to get it. I spend all this time preparing lessons, trying to make things interesting, and they act like I'm speaking another language." Marcus nodded sympathetically. "Teenagers can be tough," he said simply, "but some of them might surprise you." Mrs. Harper raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Oh yeah? Like who?" Marcus shrugged, keeping his tone light. "You never know. Sometimes the quiet ones have the biggest ideas." Mrs. Harper let out a short laugh, glancing at the chalkboard again. "Well, maybe you should give it a shot. Here." She pointed to the smudged remains of the equation. "Why don't you solve this while you're cleaning? Maybe you'll have better luck than my so-called geniuses." Her words were meant as a joke, but there was a slight edge to them, a trace of mockery that she didn't intend to sound quite so harsh. Marcus didn't react, though. Instead, he smiled faintly, tilting his head as if considering the challenge. "Maybe I will," he said softly, almost to himself. Mrs. Harper blinked, surprised by his response. She hadn't expected him to take her comment seriously. "Wait, what did you say?" "I said maybe I will," Marcus repeated, his voice steady. There was no arrogance in his tone, just a quiet assurance that made Mrs. Harper pause. Before she could respond, Marcus grabbed a piece of chalk from the tray below the board and leaned forward slightly, studying the faded marks left behind by the eraser. To anyone watching, it might have looked like he was merely inspecting the damage, but in reality, he was already piecing together the fragments of the equation in his mind. For Marcus, math wasn't just numbers and symbols. It was a language, a way of understanding the world. Growing up, he had always been drawn to its beauty and complexity. While other kids played sports or video games, Marcus spent hours poring over textbooks, solving problems that baffled everyone else. By the time he reached college, he was already considered a prodigy, earning scholarships and accolades for his groundbreaking research. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and Marcus's journey hadn't gone as planned. Financial struggles, family obligations, and a series of unfortunate events had forced him to leave academia behind. Now, years later, he found himself working as a janitor in a high school, content to live a quiet life away from the spotlight. Still, old habits die hard. As Marcus stared at the chalkboard, his mind began to race. The problem was tricky, yes, but not impossible. In fact, it reminded him of something he'd worked on during his graduate studies, a multivariable optimization issue that required careful thought and precision. Without hesitation, Marcus started writing, filling in the gaps where the original equation had been erased. His movements were deliberate, confident, as if he were conducting a symphony rather than solving a math problem. Mrs. Harper watched him in stunned silence, her initial amusement quickly giving way to disbelief. At first, she assumed he was just pretending, humoring her little joke. But as the minutes ticked by and Marcus continued to write, she realized he actually knew what he was doing. Each step of the solution flowed seamlessly into the next, revealing a level of expertise that far exceeded anything she'd seen from her own students, or even some of her colleagues. By the time Marcus stepped back from the board, the equation was fully restored, along with a complete and correct solution written neatly underneath. He dusted off his hands and turned to Mrs. Harper, who was now gaping at him like she'd just witnessed a magic trick. "There you go," he said casually, as if solving a college-level calculus problem was no big deal. "Looks like your geniuses weren't too far off after all." Mrs. Harper opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She blinked several times, trying to process what had just happened. Finally, she managed to stammer, where did you learn?" Marcus hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. He wasn't one to brag about his past accomplishments, especially not to someone who clearly hadn't expected much from him. But there was something about Mrs. Harper's reaction, an earnest curiosity mixed with genuine awe, that made him reconsider. After a moment, he decided to share a small piece of the truth. "I used to study math," he admitted, his tone measured. "Back in college, things didn't work out the way I planned, so here I am." Mrs. Harper's eyes widened. "College? What kind of math are we talking about here? Algebra? Geometry?" Marcus chuckled softly. "A bit more advanced than that." The realization hit Mrs. Harper like a ton of bricks. She took a step closer to the board, examining the solution more closely. Every step was flawless, every calculation precise. This wasn't the work of someone who had dabbled in math. It was the work of a true expert. Slowly, guilt began to creep in, mingling with her amazement. She had dismissed Marcus as just a janitor, someone whose contributions were limited to mopping floors and emptying trash cans. Yet here he was, proving her wrong in the most unexpected way. "Marcus," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. I had no idea. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "It's okay," Marcus interrupted gently. "No harm done." But Mrs. Harper wasn't convinced. She shook her head, looking genuinely remorseful. "No, it's not okay. I judged you based on nothing really, and that's not fair." Marcus shrugged, brushing off her apology with a wave of his hand. "Don't worry about it. Happens all the time." His nonchalance only made Mrs. Harper feel worse. She wanted to say more, to express just how impressed she was, but words failed her. Instead, she stood there silently, staring at the chalkboard as if seeing it for the first time. For years, she had prided herself on being a good teacher, someone who encouraged her students to reach their full potential. Yet in this moment, she realized she had failed to recognize the potential right in front of her. As Marcus resumed his cleaning duties, humming softly to himself, Mrs. Harper couldn't help but feel a newfound respect for the man she had once overlooked. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change both their lives forever. The next morning, Mrs. Harper arrived at school earlier than usual. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened the day before. The image of Marcus standing in front of the chalkboard, effortlessly solving a problem that had stumped her entire class, replayed in her mind over and over again. It wasn't just his skill that fascinated her. It was the calm confidence he exuded, as if tackling such a challenge was second nature to him. She felt a mix of emotions, admiration for his talent, guilt for underestimating him, and curiosity about the life he must have led before becoming a janitor. When she entered room 207, she found Marcus already there, mopping the floor near the back of the classroom. He looked up when he heard her footsteps and gave her a polite nod. "Morning, Mrs. Harper," he said cheerfully, his tone warm and friendly. "Good morning, Marcus," she replied, hesitating for a moment before continuing. "Listen, I've been thinking about yesterday, about what you did with that equation." Marcus stopped mopping and leaned on the handle of his mop, his expression unreadable. "What about it?" "Well," Mrs. Harper took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I guess I'm just curious. You said you studied math in college. How far did you go? I mean, this isn't something just anyone can do." Marcus shrugged, his movements casual but deliberate. "I went pretty far, I suppose. Got accepted into MIT, actually. Full scholarship and everything." Mrs. Harper's jaw dropped. "MIT? As in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology?" "The one and only," Marcus confirmed with a small smile. There was no hint of arrogance in his voice, just a quiet pride that made the revelation feel even more extraordinary. "But why aren't you teaching or working somewhere else? Why are you here?" The question slipped out before Mrs. Harper could stop herself, and she immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry, that probably sounded rude." "It's fine," Marcus assured her, waving off her apology. "Life doesn't always go according to plan. Things happened, family stuff, money problems, and I had to leave school. After that, I bounced around a lot of jobs. This one seemed stable enough, so I stuck with it." Mrs. Harper nodded slowly, trying to process everything he was saying. It was hard to imagine someone with his level of intelligence being content with cleaning floors and emptying trash cans. Yet Marcus didn't seem bitter about his situation. If anything, he appeared at peace, as though he had made peace with the twists and turns of his life. "You know," Mrs. Harper began, her voice softening, "you're wasted here. Talent like yours, it shouldn't be hidden away. You could be doing incredible things." Marcus chuckled lightly, shaking his head. "It's not about where you are. It's about what you do with what you've got. Besides, I like helping people. Even if it's just keeping the halls clean, it still matters." His words struck a chord with Mrs. Harper. She admired his humility, but she also knew that someone like Marcus deserved more recognition. As she thought about it, an idea began to form in her mind. An idea that might allow Marcus to share his gifts with others in a meaningful way. Later that afternoon, during the faculty meeting, Mrs. Harper brought up Marcus's name. The room was filled with teachers and administrators, all seated around a long wooden table cluttered with papers and coffee cups. Dr. Lewis, the head of the science department, sat at the head of the table, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the agenda. "Before we move on to the next item," Mrs. Harper interjected, raising her hand slightly to get everyone's attention, "I'd like to mention something important, something I think could benefit our students." Dr. Lewis glanced up, intrigued. "Go ahead, Mrs. Harper." She cleared her throat, feeling a bit nervous but determined to make her case. Yesterday, I witnessed something remarkable. Marcus Johnson, the janitor, he solved a calculus problem that most of my students couldn't even begin to understand. Not only did he solve it, but he did it perfectly. And when I asked him about it, he told me he used to study mathematics at MIT. A murmur rippled through the room as the other teachers exchanged surprised glances. Mr. Collins, the physics teacher known for his sharp tongue, raised an eyebrow skeptically. Are you serious? A janitor with a background in advanced math? That's hard to believe. I know it sounds unbelievable, Mrs. Harper admitted, but I saw it with my own eyes. Trust me, this man is brilliant. And I think we should consider finding a way to involve him in our STEM programs. He could be a huge asset to our students. Dr. Lewis leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Interesting. Do you think he'd be open to it? I'm sure he would, Mrs. Harper replied confidently. He cares deeply about education, I can tell. But we need to approach him respectfully. We can't treat this like some kind of charity project. He's not just a janitor. He's a resource we shouldn't ignore. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed her words. Finally, Dr. Lewis nodded slowly. All right, let's bring him in for a conversation. See what he thinks. If he's willing, maybe we can find a role for him in the upcoming STEM competition. The following day, Dr. Lewis approached Marcus during his lunch break. Marcus was sitting alone in the cafeteria, eating a sandwich while reading a worn-out paperback book. When Dr. Lewis pulled up a chair across from him, Marcus looked up, surprised. Mind if I join you? Dr. Lewis asked, gesturing to the empty seat. Not at all, Marcus replied, closing his book and setting it aside. What's on your mind, Dr. Lewis? Dr. Lewis smiled faintly, folding his hands on the table. To be honest, I wanted to talk to you about something important. Mrs. Harper mentioned your impressive skills in mathematics. I have to admit, I was skeptical at first, but after seeing the work you did on that chalkboard, I'm convinced. You're incredibly talented, Marcus. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly unused to receiving such praise. Thanks, but I don't see what the big deal is. Just numbers, right? Just numbers? Dr. Lewis laughed softly. If only it were that simple. Look, let me cut to the chase. Our school has been invited to participate in a national STEM competition. It's a chance for students to showcase their projects and compete against some of the best schools in the country. The problem is, our team is struggling. They lack direction, creativity, and frankly, someone who can push them to think outside the box. Marcus frowned slightly, sensing where this was going. And you want me to help them? Yes, Dr. Lewis said firmly. Not as a janitor, but as a mentor. Someone who can guide them, challenge them, and show them what's possible. Your expertise could make all the difference. Marcus hesitated, unsure how to respond. On one hand, the idea of mentoring students excited him. He had always enjoyed sharing knowledge and inspiring others to reach their full potential. On the other hand, he worried about stepping out of his comfort zone. What if he failed? What if the students, or worse, the faculty, didn't take him seriously? I appreciate the offer, Marcus said slowly, but I'm not sure I'm the right person for this. I haven't been in academia for years. A lot has changed since then. That's true, Dr. Lewis acknowledged. But some things never change. Passion, dedication, and raw talent, they transcend time. Besides, this isn't about you having all the answers. It's about showing these kids what's possible when you combine hard work with imagination. Marcus thought about it for a moment, weighing the pros and cons. Then he remembered something Mrs. Harper had said to him earlier. You could be doing incredible things. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was his chance to make a difference, not just for himself, but for the next generation. Okay, Marcus said finally, nodding. I'll do it, but on one condition. What's that? Dr. Lewis asked. This isn't about me, Marcus emphasized. If I'm going to help, it's because I believe in these kids. Any recognition, any credit, if we win, it goes to them. Got it? Dr. Lewis smiled, visibly relieved. Deal. Over the next few days, Marcus met with the STEM team to discuss their project. The group consisted of 5 students, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. There was Emily, the quiet but analytical thinker; Ryan, the tech-savvy gamer who loved coding; Sophia, the artist with a knack for design; Jamal, the natural leader who kept everyone motivated; and Lily, the curious dreamer who constantly came up with wild ideas. At first, the students were hesitant to accept Marcus as their mentor. Some of them whispered behind his back, questioning whether a janitor could really teach them anything useful. Others were openly dismissive, rolling their eyes whenever he offered suggestions. But Marcus didn't let it bother him. Instead, he focused on earning their trust one step at a time. During their first brainstorming session, Marcus listened patiently as the students pitched various ideas. Most of them were impractical or overly complicated, but Marcus didn't criticize. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions, encouraging them to refine their thoughts. By the end of the session, they had settled on a bold concept: designing an algorithm to predict natural disasters using satellite data. As the weeks went by, Marcus's influence became undeniable. He taught the students advanced mathematical concepts, showed them how to write efficient code, and challenged them to think critically about every decision they made. Slowly but surely, the team began to gel, transforming from a disjointed group of individuals into a cohesive unit working toward a common goal. Little did they know, their journey was far from over. The challenges they faced at the competition would test not only their skills, but also their unity as a team. But for now, they were riding high on hope and determination, buoyed by the belief that together they could achieve the impossible. As the days turned into weeks, the STEM team at Lincoln High School began to feel a mix of excitement and pressure. The national competition was just around the corner, and while they had made incredible progress under Marcus's guidance, tensions were starting to rise. It wasn't just about the project anymore. It was about trust, teamwork, and proving themselves in a world that often overlooked schools like theirs. Marcus could sense the growing strain among the students. During one of their late-night practice sessions in the school lab, he noticed Emily sitting alone at a computer, her face buried in her hands. She was supposed to be testing the algorithm they had developed, but instead, she looked overwhelmed and close to tears. Marcus quietly walked over and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Hey," he said gently. "What's going on?" Emily glanced up, startled, then quickly wiped her eyes. "It's nothing," she muttered, avoiding his gaze. "I'm fine." Marcus pulled up a chair and sat beside her. "You don't look fine. Talk to me." After a moment of hesitation, Emily sighed deeply. "It's just, this feels too big. You know, what if we mess up? Everyone else in this competition comes from fancy schools with tons of resources. We're just us, a bunch of kids from Lincoln High with duct-taped laptops and borrowed equipment. How are we supposed to compete with that?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with doubt. Marcus nodded thoughtfully, understanding exactly how she felt. He had been in similar situations before, times when the odds seemed stacked against him, and the weight of expectations threatened to crush his spirit. But he also knew something Emily didn't yet realize. Sometimes being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. "You're right," Marcus admitted, leaning back in his chair. "We don't have the same resources as those other schools. And yeah, maybe some people will count us out before we even step foot in the room, but here's the thing. You can't control what other people think or have. All you can do is focus on what you bring to the table." Emily frowned, still unconvinced. "But what if it's not enough?" "It will be," Marcus said firmly, his voice steady and calm. "Because you guys aren't just building an algorithm. You're creating something meaningful, something that could save lives. That's worth more than any fancy gadget or expensive lab. Trust me, I've seen firsthand how much impact a single idea can have when it's backed by passion and hard work." His words seemed to resonate with Emily, though she didn't say anything right away. Instead, she turned back to her computer and resumed typing, her fingers moving faster now, fueled by renewed determination. Marcus gave her a small smile before standing up and walking over to check on the rest of the team. Meanwhile, outside, the lab whispers of discontent were spreading among the faculty. While Mrs. Harper and Dr. Lewis fully supported Marcus's involvement with the STEM team, not everyone shared their enthusiasm. Mr. Collins, the physics teacher, had been vocal about his disapproval from the start. To him, having a janitor lead, the team felt like a slap in the face to the entire teaching staff. "They're setting these kids up for failure," Mr. Collins grumbled during lunch one day, addressing a small group of colleagues. "A janitor mentoring a STEM team? It's absurd. What does he know about running a competition-level project?" Mrs. Harper, who happened to overhear the comment, couldn't stay silent. "Have you even seen what they've accomplished so far?" she shot back, her tone sharp. "That janitor has taken a group of struggling students and turned them into a cohesive team with a groundbreaking project. Maybe instead of criticizing, you should take a closer look at what's really happening." Mr. Collins scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "I'm sure it's impressive for a high school project, but let's not kid ourselves. They're going up against schools with PhD-level advisors and state-of-the-art facilities. No amount of pep talks or clever algorithms is going to change that." The argument continued, drawing attention from nearby teachers. Some sided with Mrs. Harper, praising Marcus's dedication and expertise, while others remained skeptical, agreeing with Mr. Collins that the team was in over their heads. The debate grew heated, reflecting the broader divide within the school community. Despite the criticism, Marcus refused to let negativity affect him or the students. When rumors of the disagreement reached the team, he gathered them together to address the issue head-on. "I want you all to listen carefully," Marcus began, his voice calm but firm. "There are people who believe in you and there are people who don't. That's life. Not everyone is going to see your potential or understand why you're doing this. But none of that matters. What matters is whether you believe in yourselves. If you go into this competition doubting your abilities, then yes, you'll fail. But if you walk in there knowing you've done everything you can, then no matter what happens, you've already won." His speech struck a chord with the students. Ryan, who had always been quick to crack jokes, nodded solemnly. "He's right," he said. "We've worked too hard to let anyone else's opinions drag us down." Jamal raised his fist in mock celebration. "Let's show them what Lincoln High is made of." The mood in the room shifted instantly, the earlier tension replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time, the team truly felt united, not just as classmates, but as a family working toward a common goal. As the competition date approached, the team spent every waking moment perfecting their project. They tested the algorithm countless times, tweaking variables and adjusting parameters until it ran smoothly. Sophia designed a sleek presentation board, using her artistic skills to make their display stand out. Lily wrote a script for their oral presentation, weaving in personal anecdotes to highlight the real-world applications of their work. Even Mr. Collins' skepticism began to wane as he saw the final product come together. On the morning of the competition, the atmosphere at Lincoln High was electric. Parents, teachers, and fellow students gathered in the auditorium to wish the team luck before they boarded the bus headed for the event venue. Mrs. Harper hugged each student tightly, her eyes glistening with pride. "You've got this," she whispered to Emily, who smiled nervously but nodded confidently. When the bus finally arrived at the convention center, the team stepped off feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. The building was massive, filled with rows of booths showcasing projects from schools across the country. Everywhere they looked, they saw polished displays, professional-looking prototypes, and teams wearing matching uniforms. Compared to the sleek presentation surrounding them, their own booth, with its handmade posters and slightly battered laptop, felt modest. But Marcus reminded them of what truly mattered. "Don't compare yourselves to anyone else," he said as they set up their display. "Focus on telling your story. Let the judges see the heart behind your work." The judging process was intense. Each team had to present their project to a panel of experts answering questions about their methodology, innovation, and potential impact. When it was Lincoln High's turn, the students took turns explaining different aspects of their algorithm. Emily handled the technical details, her voice steady despite her nerves. Ryan demonstrated the program, showing how it analyzed satellite data to predict natural disasters with remarkable accuracy. Sophia pointed out key visuals on their presentation board, while Jamal tied everything together with a passionate conclusion about the importance of accessible technology. Just as they finished their presentation, one of the judges, a stern-looking woman in a tailored suit, raised her hand. "Impressive," she said, her tone measured. "But I have to ask, how original is this idea? I've seen similar concepts presented at previous competitions." The question caught the team off guard. For a split second, panic flickered across their faces. Then Marcus stepped forward, his presence calming yet commanding. "You're absolutely right," he admitted. "The concept itself isn't entirely new. What makes our project unique is the approach. We've streamlined the process, making it accessible to communities without advanced resources. It's not just about predicting disasters, it's about empowering people to prepare and respond effectively." The judge studied him for a moment, then nodded approvingly. "Fair point. Thank you for clarifying." After the judges moved on to the next team, the students exhaled collectively, their relief palpable. "That was intense," Lily said, fanning herself dramatically. "But I think we nailed it." "We did," Marcus agreed, smiling proudly. "Now all we can do is wait and see." While the competition results wouldn't be announced until later that evening, the experience itself had already transformed the team. They had faced challenges, both internal and external, and come out stronger on the other side. More importantly, they had discovered something invaluable: the power of believing in themselves and in each other. As they packed up their booth and prepared to head home, Marcus lingered for a moment, watching the students laugh and joke as they... The bus ride back to Lincoln High was a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The students were buzzing with energy, replaying every moment of the competition in their minds. They laughed about the nervous mistakes they had made during their presentation, like when Ryan accidentally called the algorithm a robot instead of a program. They also debated whether the judges had seemed impressed or uninterested, analyzing every raised eyebrow and nod. Marcus sat quietly near the front of the bus, listening to their chatter with a small smile on his face. He didn't interrupt or join in. Instead, he let the students process everything on their own. For many of them, this trip had been their first real taste of stepping outside their comfort zones, and they were handling it better than he could have hoped. As the bus rolled closer to school, however, reality began to set in. The initial excitement faded, replaced by uncertainty. What if they didn't win? What if all their hard work amounted to nothing more than a participation trophy? These thoughts weighed heavily on the team's minds, even though no one voiced them aloud. When they arrived back at Lincoln High, the parking lot was empty except for a few cars belonging to teachers who had stayed late. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the asphalt. As the students filed off the bus, dragging their equipment and posters behind them, Mrs. Harper appeared from the main entrance, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "How did it go?" she asked eagerly, her eyes scanning their faces for clues. "It went okay," Emily replied hesitantly, glancing at the others for support. "We did our best," Mrs. Harper nodded, trying to mask her concern. She knew how much this meant, to them, and to Marcus. "Well, I'm proud of you all. No matter what happens, you've already achieved something incredible." The students murmured their thanks, but it was clear that her words weren't enough to ease their anxiety. They unloaded the bus in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Marcus lingered until everyone else had gone inside, then turned to Mrs. Harper with a reassuring smile. "They'll be fine," he said softly. "Win or lose, they've learned lessons that will stick with them for life." Mrs. Harper sighed, shaking her head. "I just hate seeing them doubt themselves after everything they've done." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "Doubt is part of the process. It means they care, and trust me, they'll bounce back stronger because of it." The next morning at school, the STEM team gathered in the lab to clean up their materials and discuss what came next. The results of the competition wouldn't be announced for another 2 days, leaving them in limbo. Some of the students tried to stay busy. Sophia sketched new design ideas for future projects while Jamal organized the leftover supplies. But others, like Lily, couldn't concentrate. "I feel so restless," Lily admitted, slumping into a chair. What if we don't hear anything? What if they forget about us? They won't forget about us, Ryan said firmly, though his voice lacked conviction. Even if we don't win, at least we gave it our all. But that's just it, Lily countered. We worked so hard. Doesn't that count for something? Before anyone could respond, the door to the lab swung open, and Mr. Collins walked in. His expression was unreadable, his hands stuffed into the pockets of his suit jacket. The students froze, unsure why he was there. Marcus, who had been helping Sophia sort through papers, straightened up and greeted him politely. "Can we help you, Mr. Collins?" Marcus asked, his tone neutral. Mr. Collins cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "Actually, I wanted to speak to the team, if you don't mind." The students exchanged wary glances. Mr. Collins rarely interacted with them unless it was to criticize their work. Whatever he wanted, it probably wasn't good news. "I'll give you some space," Marcus said, gesturing toward the door. "Let me know if you need anything." As Marcus stepped out, Mr. Collins pulled up a chair and faced the group. For a moment, he simply stared at them as if searching for the right words. Finally, he spoke. "I owe you an apology," he said bluntly, his voice gruff but sincere. "I've been skeptical about this whole project from the beginning. Frankly, I didn't think you had a chance against those other schools. But after seeing your display and hearing how you presented yourselves, and well, I was wrong." The room fell silent. The students stared at him, stunned. Apologies from Mr. Collins were rare, almost unheard of. Even Emily, usually quick to speak, found herself at a loss for words. "You proved me wrong," Mr. Collins continued, his gaze sweeping over the group. "You took a simple idea and turned it into something meaningful, something that could actually make a difference. That takes guts and talent, so thank you for reminding me not to underestimate people." The tension in the room melted away, replaced by a sense of pride. Though none of them said it aloud, they all felt vindicated. All the doubts, all the whispers behind their backs, it didn't matter anymore. They had earned respect, not just from Mr. Collins, but from themselves. When Marcus returned a few minutes later, he found the students laughing and joking, their earlier gloom completely gone. "What happened?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Mr. Collins apologized," Sophia explained, still grinning. "He said we were amazing." Marcus chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Well, I guess miracles do happen." 2 days later, the entire school buzzed with anticipation as the results of the STEM competition were finally posted online. By lunchtime, word spread like wildfire. Lincoln High had placed second overall in the national competition. While they hadn't taken home the top prize, their achievement was monumental, a feat no one had expected from a school with limited resources. The announcement sent waves of celebration throughout the building. Students cheered in the hallways, teachers hugged each other, and even the cafeteria staff joined in the festivities. When the STEM team walked into the cafeteria that afternoon, carrying the silver trophy they had received in the mail, the room erupted into applause. Mrs. Harper wiped tears from her eyes as she hugged each student tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered over and over again. "You've made history." Dr. Lewis shook Marcus's hand firmly, his grin wide. "You did it, Marcus. You inspired these kids to reach heights none of us thought possible." Marcus smiled humbly, deflecting the praise. "They did it," he corrected. "All I did was point them in the right direction." But the students knew better. Without Marcus's guidance, patience, and belief in them, they never would have made it this far. As they posed for photos with the trophy, surrounded by classmates and teachers, they couldn't help but feel grateful for the man who had changed their lives. Later that evening, as the excitement began to die down, Marcus stood alone in the now empty lab. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above. He looked around at the scattered papers, the half-empty coffee cups, and the remnants of their hard work. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel a deep sense of fulfillment. This journey hadn't been about proving himself to others. It had been about giving back, about showing a group of kids that their dreams were worth fighting for, no matter where they came from or what obstacles stood in their way. and as he turned off the lights and closed the door behind him, Marcus knew he had found his purpose once again. The following week, life at Lincoln High began to return to normal, or as normal as it could be after such a monumental achievement. The STEM team became local celebrities featured in newspaper articles and interviewed on local TV stations. Parents praised the school for fostering such talent, and alumni donations poured in to support future projects. For Marcus, the attention was bittersweet. On one hand, he was glad to see the students getting the recognition they deserved. On the other hand, he struggled with the sudden spotlight on himself. People treated him differently now, offering compliments and asking for advice. Some even suggested he apply for teaching positions or return to academia. But Marcus wasn't ready to embrace those opportunities. Not yet. Instead, he focused on continuing his role as a mentor, working closely with Mrs. Harper and Dr. Lewis to develop new programs for underrepresented students in STEM fields. Together, they created workshops, tutoring sessions, and outreach initiatives designed to inspire the next generation of innovators. One afternoon, as Marcus cleaned the halls after school, he noticed a group of freshmen lingering near the bulletin board outside the science lab. They were reading flyers about the upcoming STEM club meetings, their faces lit with curiosity. "Think you guys might sign up?" Marcus asked, pausing beside them with a friendly smile. One of the boys nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, maybe. Those upperclassmen are kind of intimidating, though." "They're just regular people," Marcus assured him. "And trust me, if you put your mind to it, you can do anything they can do." The boy grinned, clearly encouraged. "Cool, thanks, Mr. Johnson." As Marcus walked away, he felt a familiar warmth in his chest, the same feeling he'd experienced when he first started mentoring the STEM team. It was the satisfaction of knowing he was making a difference, one student at a time. Little did he know, his impact extended far beyond Lincoln High. Across town, parents talked about his story at dinner tables, inspiring their children to pursue their passions despite adversity. Teachers shared his example in faculty meetings, urging colleagues to look beyond stereotypes and recognize potential in unexpected places. Even strangers who read about the weeks following the STEM competition brought a new rhythm to life at Lincoln High. The buzz of excitement had settled into a steady hum, but the impact of the team's success continued to ripple through the school. Posters celebrating their achievement hung in the hallways, and students who had once dismissed STEM subjects as too hard or not for them began signing up for workshops and tutoring sessions. Even teachers who had been skeptical about Marcus's involvement were now eager to collaborate with him, recognizing the value he brought to the table. Marcus, however, remained humble. He didn't seek recognition or praise. Instead, he focused on nurturing the growing interest in science and math among the students. Every day after school, he could be found in the lab, helping kids with homework, explaining tricky concepts, or brainstorming ideas for future projects. His presence was a constant source of encouragement, and his calm demeanor made even the most intimidated students feel comfortable asking questions. One afternoon, as Marcus worked with a group of freshmen on a coding exercise, Mrs. Harper entered, the lab carrying a stack of papers. She looked frazzled but happy, her cheeks flushed from rushing between classes. "Marcus," she called out, waving one of the papers in the air. "You've got mail." Marcus glanced up, puzzled. "Mail? For me?" "Yes, for you," Mrs. Harper confirmed, handing him the envelope. "It's from MIT." The room fell, silent as everyone turned to look at Marcus. Even the freshmen paused mid-coding, their eyes wide with curiosity. Marcus stared at the envelope for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without saying a word, he tore it open and began reading the letter inside. Mrs. Harper hovered anxiously, unable to contain her excitement. "Well, what does it say?" Marcus took a deep breath before speaking. "They want me to come back," he said quietly, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Not as a student, obviously, but as a guest lecturer. They're hosting a conference next month, and they've invited me to speak about my experience mentoring underserved students in STEM." The lab erupted into cheers. The freshmen clapped enthusiastically, while Mrs. Harper beamed with pride. "That's incredible," she exclaimed. "You have to go." Marcus shook his head, still processing the news. I don't know. It's been so long since I've done anything like that. What if I mess it up? You won't mess it up, Mrs. Harper insisted firmly. You're the reason these kids are succeeding. If anyone deserves to share their story, it's you. The students nodded in agreement, urging Marcus to accept the invitation. Ryan, who had become particularly close to Marcus over the past few months, stepped forward. Mr. Johnson, you've taught us how to believe in ourselves. Now it's your turn to show the world what you're capable of. Marcus smiled faintly, touched by their support. All right, he said finally. I'll think about it. Over. The next few days, Marcus wrestled with the decision. On one hand, the idea of returning to MIT filled him with both excitement and anxiety. It was a chance to reconnect with a part of his past he had long buried, a reminder of the dreams he once had and the person he used to be. But on the other hand, he worried about leaving the students behind. He had grown attached to them, and the thought of stepping away, even temporarily, felt unsettling. To clear his mind, Marcus took a walk around the school grounds during his lunch break. As he strolled past the basketball court, he noticed Jamal practicing free throws alone. The boy spotted him and waved, motioning for Marcus to join him. Hey, Mr. Johnson, Jamal greeted him warmly, dribbling the ball between his legs. What's up? Just thinking, Marcus replied, leaning against the fence. About the MIT thing? Jamal guessed, raising an eyebrow. When Marcus nodded, Jamal grinned. You should totally go. You've earned it. It's not that simple, Marcus admitted. What about you guys? Who's going to keep working with you while I'm gone? Jamal shrugged, unfazed. We'll manage. Besides, this isn't just about us, it's about showing people like us that we can succeed, no matter where we start. If you go and talk about what you've done here, maybe more schools will follow our example. That's worth missing a couple of weeks, don't you think? Marcus chuckled softly, impressed by the boy's maturity. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best, Jamal quipped, tossing him the basketball. Now stop worrying and take the shot. Marcus caught the ball and hesitated for a moment before taking aim and shooting. The ball swished cleanly through the hoop, earning a cheer from Jamal. Nice one, the boy exclaimed. See? Trust yourself. As they laughed together, Marcus felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Maybe Jamal was right. Maybe this wasn't just about him. It was about creating opportunities for others. With renewed determination, he decided to accept the invitation. The day of the conference arrived quickly. Marcus stood backstage at MIT's auditorium, nervously adjusting his tie as he waited for his turn to speak. The room was packed with professors, researchers, and students, all eager to hear from experts in various fields. As he scanned the crowd, he spotted Dr. Lewis and Mrs. Harper sitting near the front, smiling encouragingly. Their presence calmed him, reminding him why he was there. When his name was announced, Marcus walked onto the stage to polite applause. He adjusted the microphone and took a deep breath, letting his gaze sweep across the audience. Thank you all for having me today, he began, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. I never imagined I'd be standing here again, not after everything that happened in my life. But sometimes paths we think are closed can reopen in unexpected ways. He went on to share his journey, starting with his time at MIT and the challenges that forced him to leave academia. He spoke candidly about the years he spent working odd jobs, including his current role as a janitor at Lincoln High. But the heart of his speech was about the students, their struggles, their triumphs, and the lessons he had learned from them. These kids taught me something important, Marcus said, his tone softening. They reminded me that brilliance isn't limited to certain places or circumstances. It exists everywhere. You just have to look for it. And when you find it, nurture it. Give people the tools they need to succeed and watch them flourish. The audience listened intently, hanging on every word. When Marcus finished, the room erupted into applause, louder and more heartfelt than he had anticipated. Several people approached him afterward, praising his message and asking how they could implement similar programs at their own schools. As Marcus mingled with attendees, shaking hands and answering questions, he couldn't help but feel a sense of fulfillment. This wasn't just about validation, it was about sparking change. By sharing his story, he hoped to inspire others to create opportunities for underrepresented students, just as he had done at Lincoln High. Back at school, the students were eager to hear about Marcus's trip. During their next meeting in the EIEI lab, they gathered around him, peppering him with questions. "How was it?" Emily asked, her eyes shining with curiosity. "Did you meet any famous scientists?" Ryan chimed in. "What did they say about your speech?" Sophia added. Marcus laughed, holding up his hands to quiet them. "One question at a time," he joked. "It was amazing. Everyone was really supportive, and they loved hearing about what we've accomplished here. Some of them even want to visit Lincoln High to see our program firsthand." The students cheered, thrilled by the prospect of showcasing their work to outsiders. But Marcus wasn't done yet. "There's something else," he said, his tone turning serious. "While I was there, I realized how much potential all of you have, not just in STEM but in everything you do. So I've decided to start something new. A mentorship program specifically for students who might not otherwise get the chance to explore their talents." The room fell silent as the students absorbed his words. "What kind of program?" Lily asked cautiously. "It'll focus on identifying kids with untapped potential, kids like you, and giving them the resources they need to thrive," Marcus explained. "We'll partner with local businesses, universities, and community organizations to provide workshops, internships, and scholarships. My hope is that it'll help bridge the gap for students who might otherwise fall through the cracks." The students exchanged excited glances, already imagining the possibilities. "Can we help?" Jamal asked eagerly. "Of course," Marcus replied with a smile. "This isn't just my project, it's ours. Together, we can make a real difference." As the weeks passed, the mentorship program began to take shape. Students volunteered their time to tutor younger classmates, while teachers collaborated with Marcus to design engaging activities. Local companies donated equipment and funding, inspired by Marcus's vision. Even parents got involved, organizing fundraisers and spreading the word throughout the community. Through it all, Marcus remained the driving force behind the initiative. He worked tirelessly, balancing his responsibilities as a janitor with his role as a mentor and advocate. Though the workload was demanding, he never complained. Instead, he found joy in seeing the program grow and witnessing the positive impact it had on the students. One evening, as Marcus locked up the lab after a long day of meetings, Mrs. Harper appeared beside him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this," she said, handing him one of the cups. "Thanks," Marcus replied gratefully, taking a sip. "I needed it." The mentorship program at Lincoln High quickly became a cornerstone of the school. Students from all grades participated, and the initiative attracted attention far beyond the local community. News outlets featured stories about the program, highlighting its success in empowering underrepresented students. Parents praised it as a lifeline for kids who might otherwise have been overlooked. Even neighboring schools began reaching out to Marcus and Dr. Lewis, asking for advice on how to replicate their model. For Marcus, the growing recognition was both rewarding and overwhelming. He had never sought fame or glory, but he couldn't deny the satisfaction of seeing his vision come to life. Every day he witnessed students discovering new passions, gaining confidence, and dreaming bigger than they ever thought possible. It reminded him of his own journey, how a single opportunity could change everything. One afternoon, as Marcus cleaned the hallway near the gymnasium, he overheard 2 freshmen talking excitedly. They were discussing an upcoming robotics competition, one of many events the mentorship program had helped organize. One of the boys, a shy kid named Alex, mentioned that he wanted to join but didn't think he was smart enough. "I'm not like those STEM team kids," Alex said, his voice tinged with self-doubt. "I'll just mess things up." The other boy shook his head. "You don't know that. Mr. Johnson says anyone can do this stuff if they try. Maybe you should ask him." Marcus smiled to himself, feeling a surge of pride. His message of inclusion and perseverance was spreading, not because of anything extraordinary he had done, but because people were starting to believe in themselves. He decided to approach Alex after school and offer some encouragement. "Hey, Alex," Marcus said, walking up to the boy as he packed his backpack. "I heard you're interested in the robotics competition." Alex looked startled, then sheepish. "Yeah, but I don't know if I'm good enough." "You don't have to be good enough to start," Marcus replied gently. "You just have to be willing to learn. Why don't you come to the lab tomorrow? We'll figure it out together." Alex hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay. Thanks, Mr. Johnson." Moments like these reminded Marcus why he kept pushing forward. It wasn't about accolades or achievements. It was about helping others find their footing in a world that often felt stacked against them. As the months passed, the mentorship program continued to grow, drawing support from unexpected places. Local businesses donated equipment and funding, while alumni contributed scholarships for participants. Universities sent representatives to observe the program, eager to recruit talented students. Even government officials took notice, praising Lincoln High as a model for educational equity. Despite the success, Marcus remained grounded. He still worked as a janitor, finding peace in the simplicity of his routine. Sweeping floors and emptying trash cans gave him time to reflect, to recharge, and to stay connected to the heart of the school. To him, every task, no matter how small, was part of something larger. Mrs. Harper often teased him about his dual roles. "You're the only person I know who can mop a floor and inspire genius in the same hour," she joked one morning as they crossed paths in the hallway. Marcus chuckled, leaning on his mop handle. "It's all part of the job." But Mrs. Harper grew serious, her expression thoughtful. "Seriously, though, you've changed this place, not just for the students, but for everyone. You've reminded us what education is supposed to be about." Marcus shrugged modestly. "I just did what felt right. None of this would have happened without people like you believing in me. And none of it would have happened without you leading the way." Mrs. Harper countered firmly. "Don't downplay what you've done, Marcus. You're making history here." History. The word lingered in Marcus's mind long after their conversation ended. He had spent years trying to leave his past behind, to blend into the background, and avoid standing out. But now he realized that his story wasn't something to hide, it was something to share. By embracing his talents and using them to help others, he had found a new purpose. The following spring, Lincoln High hosted its first annual STEM Innovation Fair, a celebration of student projects inspired by the mentorship program. Booths filled the gymnasium, showcasing everything from solar-powered gadgets to apps designed to improve mental health. Parents, teachers, and community members wandered through the aisles, marveling at the creativity and ingenuity on display. At the center of it all stood Marcus, quietly observing the scene with a proud smile. The fair wasn't just a showcase of student work, it was proof that opportunity, when given freely, could transform lives. As he watched Emily explain her project to a group of visitors, or Ryan demonstrate his coding skills with infectious enthusiasm, Marcus felt a deep sense of fulfillment. These kids weren't just building robots or writing algorithms, they were building futures. Dr. Lewis approached Marcus during a lull in the activity, holding 2 cups of punch. "Here," he said, handing one to Marcus. "You look like you could use a break." Marcus accepted the drink gratefully, leaning against a nearby table. "Thanks, this is amazing." "It is," Dr. Lewis agreed, surveying the bustling gymnasium. "And it's all because of you. You've created something truly special here." Marcus shook his head, deflecting the praise. "It's not just me. Everyone played a part. The teachers, the parents, the students. This belongs to all of us." Dr. Lewis nodded, but his expression turned serious. "Still, I need to ask you something. Have you thought about teaching full-time? We'd love to have you in the classroom permanently." Marcus hesitated, surprised by the question. Teaching had always been a distant dream, something he assumed was out of reach. But now, surrounded by evidence of what he had accomplished, the idea didn't seem so impossible. "I'll think about it," he said finally, his tone thoughtful. "But for now, I'm happy where I am." Dr. Lewis smiled, understanding. "Take your time. Just know the offer's on the table whenever you're ready." Later that evening, as the fair wound down and the crowd thinned out, Marcus found himself standing alone in the quiet gymnasium. The banners and displays were still up, remnants of the day's excitement. He walked slowly between the booths, taking in the handwritten notes, sketches, and prototypes left behind by the students. Each one told a story, a spark of curiosity, nurtured into flame. As he reached the exit, he noticed a small piece of paper taped to the door. It was a thank you note, written in messy handwriting. "Thanks, Mr. Johnson, for showing me I can be more than I thought I could be." Below it was a doodle of a rocket ship blasting off into space. Marcus chuckled softly, folding the note and tucking it into his pocket. It wasn't signed, but he didn't need to know who had written it. The message spoke for itself, and for countless others like it. Stepping outside, Marcus gazed up at the night sky, dotted with stars. For so long, he had felt lost, adrift in a sea of missed opportunities and unfulfilled dreams. But now, standing here, he realized he had found his place. He wasn't just a janitor or a mentor or a speaker. He was a guide, a bridge between potential and possibility. And as he walked home under the vast, endless sky, Marcus knew he had finally come full circle. Life hadn't gone according to plan, but maybe that was okay. Sometimes the best journeys are the ones we never see coming.